It is a weird, weird era to be witnessing and to be experiencing. And I don't think that anyone should be trying to do it alone. Division, disinformation, outrage, rising inequality. The world seemingly on the precipice of major conflict. And honestly, I think we all experienced this intense, prolonged global trauma that hasn't even been fully acknowledged or even processed. It is perfectly okay to ask for help. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't until I was an adult that I fully understood that. And now I see that it is vital that we find, develop, and nurture connection and community. I try my best to default to kindness because it's impossible to know what people are going through. There's so much happening underneath the surface that we simply are not aware of. Someone told me recently that life is really just a continuous rhythm of questions and answers, and I think there's a good amount of truth to that. In certain ways, we're spending our entire life seeking new information, adjusting, changing. I'm not even sure if we ever have everything figured out. I'm not even sure that we're supposed to. I came out to Hawaii seeking some answers, and I certainly found some, but I found myself with a multitude of brand new questions, and I'm not sure that I can answer them here. I thought I would have the opportunity to figure everything out, and that is absolutely not what happened. This film morphed into this sort of snapshot of all of us, where we are, what's actually happening in our lives, and how we're feeling about things in general. You can treat this film like a podcast, honestly, because the visuals are secondary to the audio. We asked friends to record their thoughts about life, love, and loss, and to simply answer the question of how are you right now, truly. And it's a wide range of feelings in the responses that we received, beautiful and raw. And as a warning, it's a mix of sadness, warmth, love, and hurt. Tonally, you can expect it to be kind of all over the place. We are presenting these recordings as unedited as possible. We want to show a genuine glimpse at how everyone is feeling right now. It's a strange world, and we want to acknowledge that it's okay if things don't feel perfect. It's okay if things feel weird, because they absolutely are. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're doing okay.
I am 6 months into my season of grief. I am grieving the end of a 4-year relationship with a man that I saw myself having children with. That I, at the age of 33, thought I had found the one. And so the loss, the rejection, the abandonment, the regret, just all of the hard feelings, the grief, the loss, the sorrow. They've been very, very real, very dark, very hard emotions. I've been in a very fragile place for the last 6 months. And so I want to share, the other side of the coin to love. Love and loss, and hopefully new life. My friends and family, in this time of support, they want to tell me things like, you'll find someone else. The next person will be better. Time heals all wounds. It was an experience. You'll learn from your experience. And so forth and so on. All the things that you kind of hear when someone's going through a breakup. But I want to share what I'm going through, and that's a real death of a chapter. And quite literally, you know that saying how people say that their life flashes before their eyes when they have a near-death experience? I am sort of experiencing a death of this relationship, and the last 4 years of our lives together have been flashing before my eyes, down to the last details. The specific texture and color and patterns of the quilts that was on the bed that we stayed at the Airbnb in Peru together. And so I just want to share that, losing a relationship it's like losing a part of your life or a chapter in your life, and at least I am experiencing the tunnel of our life flashing before our eyes. And I'm hoping that I'm still in the tunnel, but I'm hoping that at the end of the tunnel there is sort of a new life, a resurrection, a rebirth after death, and that I will find sort of acceptance in what's happened. But yeah, you know how that song goes. There's a song that goes, anywhere I would have followed you. And that was kind of my relationship with this man. I followed him everywhere, all around the world, through Mexico, through Peru, through Costa Rica, all over California, back to Hawaii, And so yeah, there's a real tragedy in the end of our relationship. But I hope through this journey of love and loss that I will find new life. Thanks for listening to my story.
You reached out to ask, how are you really? And that's a question that I don't really think about a lot. How am I? Every day I feel like I'm on autopilot and I'm just going through the motions, trying my best to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I'm so focused on the mistakes that I'm making and the lows, the things that I perceive that are failures, when really those are the exact things that are going to guide me to my true destination. My failures and my mistakes show me exactly where I need to continue putting in the work and the effort and trying to change. It's really the only measure I have, because when I succeed or when I do something well, everybody jumps to tell me that. But when I fail, it's really me alone with that feeling, and truly accepting it and making something of that. That's just so hard. I'm trying so hard to feel whole, to feel like when I look in the mirror, I love what I see, and I accept where I am today, even if it's not where I want to be. I have the ability to be really honest with myself and say, here are the good things, here are the bad things, and that's okay. I'm never going to be a perfect person, And I just always strived for perfection, to live in a realm void of mistakes. But when I look in the mirror, I realize the most imperfect things about me are the most authentic things. Like when I can't breathe and I'm just laughing so hard, and people probably think I'm having some kind of heart attack, but it's really just the purest expression of joy. Or when I'm on an airplane and we're about to take off and my heart is just pounding and my face is pressed against the window like I'm 8 years old, and I'm just waiting to watch the earth fall away and waiting for that feeling of lifting off the ground. I'm not a perfect person, and I will never be. And it took me this long to accept that and still look in the mirror and think there's so much beauty there in all the cracks and all the folds, in every place that someone might say, I need to work on myself. That's really who I am. Lately, I've been noticing just how lonely some people are in this world, and just seeing it in their eyes. And there's so many people out there that don't have anyone, no one they can confide in or tell their darkest secrets to and feel still loved and accepted. And on a daily basis, maybe they spend a lot of time alone or a lot of time scrolling through the internet and just feeling like they're in a void. And if I can reach for them and just provide any type of kindness, a smile, if I can reach for their hand and just hold it, if I can compliment them, if I can just have a genuine moment of connection, maybe they'll just feel 1% less lonely. And if I can do that for someone, I know that the world will heal. And our world will heal if we can all do that together, and if we can all keep in mind that everybody is struggling with something, and loneliness is an epidemic. We need to be there for each other now more than ever. Black and white, it doesn't help. There's always a gray area. There's always a way to understand someone. There's always a way to change your perspective in order to make someone else feel heard or understood, and help them feel seen. And I think that's something that we're missing, and it's honestly the medicine that we need.
Sorry, just pouring a little tea for myself. I never bring tea in here. Probably gonna spill all over myself and then I'll have a wet booth. It's worth it. Okay, I'm gonna scroll through my social media while I do this, because as a person with chronic illness, there's no better repository of things lost than going back in the past and looking at your own wasted potential. I have a lot of things to be thankful for. And I'm well positioned to know that's true, because as of this moment, I walk without a mobility aid, which is not always the case. I can currently stand throughout the day without needing to rest every few minutes. And it's a huge relief to say that right now I can do most things I would normally need to do without debilitating pain. The truth is that most of my life has been colored by pain and other people not knowing what to do about that pain. I've managed in a few different ways. The legalization of cannabis has been the number one thing improving my quality of life. I've been diagnosed with endometriosis, adenomyosis, Lyme disease, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, whatever that means, chronic fatigue, chronic Epstein-Barr, which basically means that I have active mono all the time. When I was a kid, I had stomach ulcers, and most recently, I had shingles, which knocked me out for about a month. And honestly, I thought I was dying. I also have suspected vasovagal syncope and possibly POTS, which I'm going to mangle, but I think it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Fainting. It's mostly fainting. It's kind of an overwhelming medical history of a lot of things that won't kill me, but won't make my life feel like living. But when I think about loss, selfishly, the first thing that comes to mind is the self I had before I was fully willing to face the fact that I am limited by my chronic illnesses. I had just finished grad school, and I had every intention of becoming a very successful theater actor. And then rehearsing for theater got a little too intense for my body. Going to work in the mornings became paralyzing. So I reset everything. I switched to a career I could do from my house. Made sure some of that work I could do from my bed because of how much pain I was in. And that whole life I had been planning for, paying for, investing in sort of evaporated overnight. I transitioned from being a member of society out in the world, pounding the pavement, going to auditions, meeting people, making connections, doing work that was challenging, both to the performers and to our audiences. And then it became clear that I needed surgery or I was not gonna survive. And from then on, I've been sort of a shut-in. This happened to me about 5 or 6 years ago. So when 2020 happened and the world had to follow a similar suit, something I heard on video calls right away was, well, you must be used to this once we got into lockdown. And sure, I was used to remote working from home, but I would say that I was, just as everyone else was, pretty unfamiliar with a worldwide pandemic. What I didn't expect coming out the other side of lockdown is the new fear I feel all the time in public. My various maladies mean that I'm pretty severely immunocompromised, and my husband and I just moved from a major metropolitan area to sort of a more rural setting on a river with trees and frogs that chirp in the nighttime. We were trying to have a year of rest and relaxation. But in this country, when you move to somewhere idyllic, it's usually in a hotbed of folks with opinions I don't really agree with. And that makes me scared. I had to find a new doctor when I moved here, and one of the nurses in the new office gave me an anti-vax speech when I sat down to have my vitals taken. And I'm old hat at this, right? Like, I roll up my sleeve, I know where the blood pressure cuff is gonna go, I know where the heart rate monitor is gonna stick onto my finger, get my blood oxygen. I know all this stuff by rote. So when this nurse who was inches away from my face, unmasked, was telling me that she never got any of that government shit in her body and she was super proud of it, I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I'm laughing now, but at the time I felt like she had a loaded gun in her pocket that I just hadn't seen until that moment. I was astonished that I might have to have a conversation with a medical professional about what it means to vaccinate to protect the herd, meaning that she could live her life healthy and uncomplicated. But the less vaccinated she is, the more in danger I was, sitting right in front of her. No immune system, actively healing from shingles, and pretty scared for my life. This took a turn. This went south so fast. I've been in pain my whole life, but when I got sick in my early 30s, I got sick, very, very sick. And I had to change everything about my day-to-day. And when you do that, it's hard to stay yourself or what you know to be you. The sicker I got, the less creative I was, the less vocal. This is a very real thing. The more pain I was in, the less access I had to my own breath, so I felt like I couldn't speak fully. So imagine that, feeling silenced by the medical industry because they won't listen to you, and then actually silenced by your own body, who is so focused on holding on to every last scrap of energy to try to not feel like they're dying that it won't even let you talk. What people don't prepare you for when you're chronically ill, when you're starting to realize that your whole life is changing, is that most people will leave your life. And it's okay. It's not a bad thing. You can't do the things you normally used to do with them. So the foundations of your friendship are totally different. So they can't receive what they usually get from you. And I had to come to terms with that. And it took me a very long time, honestly. It took me years. But luckily or unluckily, however you want to look at it, when my life upended itself and I became essentially bedridden, a couple years later, the whole world shut down. So I couldn't see those people anyway. And now that we're out on the other side, everything looks different, everything feels different, and we don't even understand the ramifications of what we've all just gone through. So I would say as soon as I started to really get used to the fact that my friends couldn't really be there for me the way that they were used to, and vice versa, as soon as I got used to that, we all had to get used to it. And now everything is just a little different. I'm starting to feel better these days, but I don't know whose measure of better that is, mine or someone who's able-bodied. So I'm feeling potential open up again, but that in and of itself is pretty scary because I don't know when my next flare will be or if my symptoms will get worse the deeper I dive into treatment. Being this sick is very lonely. And when the pandemic lockdown started, there was a part of me that felt a little vindicated that the rest of the world suddenly understood what it was like to live like I do. But the farther I've gotten away from 2020, the more I realize I wouldn't wish this on anyone. You know, and to that end, I don't even have to wish this on anyone because the rates of immunocompromised individuals, chronically ill people, medically complex cases, as we're called, you know, these medical mysteries that we are, the rates of this happening are increasing across the board. And I don't think it's just, oh, we're starting to notice and take the data down now. I think our universe that we've built for ourselves is killing us. We all know the generations that came before us raped and pillaged the whole planet and left nothing for future generations. I'm a chronically ill person, and I'm also a Native American person. And there's a unifying theme among a lot of Native American cultures about stewarding this land for the next 7 generations to inherit. And now I feel like most of us aren't even going to make it to the Armageddon phase because we are all so sick with the world around us. The food, the air, the mold in the walls. It's really hard to argue with the data that we did this to ourselves. I'm rambling, but the truth is I spend most of my time coming to grips with the fact that we're all making this up as we go, and that as soon as I think I have something figured out, everything will change. So in the meantime, I'm here. I weep for that version of me that I couldn't become, the actor, artist, activist. My heart is broken daily by what's happening in the world. And most days I don't even get dressed. So what would I do? What would I do? What could I possibly do to improve the world as it burns?
I'm turning 30 this year, and something I've been thinking a lot about is how do you protect your innocence and childlike qualities as you get older? And I used to think of growing up as moving forward and leaving the earlier versions of you behind, but now I think it's sort of like an onion. You know, there's every year of you just add another layer. And that means that all the earlier versions of you are still in there, tucked away and further away from the outer layer, which is you now, than they once were. But they're still in there and they're still part of you. And you can access them through things that you loved when you were younger, through taking care of that inner child in you. And I've been thinking about how to bring back play and joy in a world that feels more divided than it has in a long time and feels scarier than it has in a long time. It feels like, at least to me, that we're on the precipice of something really bad and something that will be very hard to come back from. And I feel that politically, I feel that where society is emotionally, I think everybody is starving for change, and it just feels like we're getting more and more of the same broken systems, the same broken political structures, the same, burn it all to the ground is kind of where I'm at right now. But within that, I have to take care of myself, and I have to take care of the version of me who used to love playing in my aunt's backyard and chasing pigeons in Central Park. And I was a yo-yo kid. I would like take my yo-yo to the park. And I don't know, when was the last time I just said fuck it and like played with a yo-yo? And I'm about to go buy myself a Game Boy because I was such a Game Boy kid. And, you know, let's get rid of the social media and the spending time doing that. Like, if you're going to look at a screen, look at like a little Pokemon, you know what I mean? And go outside. And I just, in this year where I'm ending a decade and starting a new one, and growing up is very much at the focus of the dialogue, I'm trying to think of ways that I can go back and just get a Mr. Softy ice cream cone and sit in Central Park and maybe chase some pigeons.
Hey y'all, it is a quiet early morning where I am. So you get the first words of the day, and you know, the concept I guess I'm rolling around my mind here is just identity and how we, you know, every day, every minute. I mean, honestly, sometimes in my more unstable times, I'm different every 5 minutes. You know, someone can say something to me and it can turn on a different part of myself, and I become different. I see the world differently. I react to the world differently. I react to myself differently. I think a lot of that is based in, you know, what part of ourselves is informing that reaction. And so, you know, we have all these identities that are stacked upon themselves, or maybe even, you know, like there's an Ezra Furman lyric where she says, well, our dreams are shattered or something like that, but we arrange them in mosaic over time. And I think that, you know, different experiences and your different desires for those experiences allow you to reach into this deck of identities and pull something out, you know, to use tarot as the simile here. It's like you wander your hand over this deck of identities until something feels right, and then you pull it out, and really all you're doing is interpreting this thing, this reflector of yourself, and in this case, it's a past you that you're reflecting in. It's funny because I pick and choose different memories to give me meaning, and I don't think it's like a lying thing, but I also think it's impossible to hold on to any kind of like, this is I know exactly how I felt in that moment. I mean, unless it's really traumatic, but even that builds different meaning over time, because as you re-experience that trauma, as you revisit it, it becomes real in other settings as well. So yeah, this morning it makes me wonder who I'll be today, and it's empowering and also a bit cautionary, in that, you know, you need to understand that there is an entire deck to pull from. You are not one thing. And as time goes on, you're only more things.
This is a story of loss and grief. It's a story about one of my very best friends, named Jordan, who passed away on February 20th, 2024. Jordan was an amazing guy. He was 30 years old, 4 months younger than me, and he had so much life ahead of him. Jordan's passing has sent an immense ripple effect of sadness and grief through his community of loved ones, and that includes me. Jordan was one of my very best friends. I loved him so much, and I know that he loved me too. We met about 10 years ago at summer camp in Maine. We were both co-counselors in a cabin called Wabanaki, looking after 12 and 13-year-olds. We immediately became best friends, and after camp, he flew over to England for my 21st birthday, and then shortly after that, I moved to Denver, and guess who wasn't too far behind? Jordan Flagar. I'm going to miss Jordan so much, and it's already evident in my day-to-day interactions with people. I walk past old people on the street, and I start crying because I know that Jordan will never be able to grow old like those people. I look up in the sky, and I see the sunshine, and I see Jordan's face in the sun like the baby from the Teletubbies. It's ridiculous, I know, but that's just what I see and what I think. The feeling is still so raw and so new that I don't really have too much else to say other than, Jordan, thank you for being my friend, and I hope you rest in peace. I'll love you forever, and I'll see you on the other side one day.
Once was I had not time to think of death. Too often had I seen him kneeling, dumb, to listen for the one last whispered breath of one who fallen could not but succumb. But that was long ago, another dream that disappeared, forgotten ere it came, and like the spindrift drifting with the stream, at last became a memory and a name. But late I chanced to meet upon a green the man whose lovely image ne'er retreats, who taught even me to breathe the pure serene of truth and beauty from the songs of Keats. And I was sad to see that time had wrought upon that gently kind and wreathed face. Then in a fleeting moment there I caught the shadow of a passing splendid race. Now he is dead, nor was there greater void, ere left by any passing from this vale. And thoughts of death I cannot now avoid, for death has come, so final, stark, so pale.
Time. Nothing is definite. There is no permanence. Change is a part of life, like waves that ebb and flow. The mountains we climb, every step can feel infinite. And then there is the destination, a moment to celebrate. If we are not careful, it can be fleeting, like grasping a handful of sand. Pay close attention to the present, even when it hurts. Even when there seems no end to the struggle. Carry those lessons onto every mountain you climb to guide you, fulfill you. Life will be what it will be. Do not hold on to control. Hold on what you know. Master focus, will, and determination. Learn how to swim.
Life seems to change a lot between your 20s and 30s. 20s you seem to be carefree, just going with the flow, living in the moment. Then you get to 30 and you're stressing about getting to bed by 10 o'clock, otherwise you're not going to get enough sleep for work on Monday. When does that happen? When do people become boring? I remember saying no to an invitation to go into an outdoor inflatable water park in the height of the summer, peak hot weather. Why? I didn't really have any excuse apart from I didn't want to. I might get injured. Is that not just too sensible? Or was I just scared to have fun? I got over myself and I went and had a great time, of course. But at what point did I start becoming the no, not me, thanks, I'm busy person? Whatever happened to the carefree person who said yes to spontaneous plans? Instead, in its place, is somebody who brings a whole pharmacy with them on holiday just in the event that they might get sick or have a blister. When did I become so serious? I feel like I've become more negative than who I used to be. I feel like the job that I do has made me very cynical. My dad told me when I joined, you deal with 3 different types of people on a daily business, on the daily, and the mad, the bad, and the sad. And he was right. I often wonder what's happened to these people in their lives that they've turned out this way. I've seen and dealt with some horrific things, and the only way you can kind of get through it is by sort of using dark humour to cope. I remember being home for a funeral and making a joke to my brother. He just got a bone for his dog. I've made a joke to be, "Oh, Barbara," in relation to the person that had passed. Obviously, I thought that was hilarious, but people who have normal jobs and normal lives didn't really find that so funny. I just thought I was probably a bit weird and insensitive. I think the key thing for me to try and remember is that there actually are still good people in this world who do very good things, and try and find the positive in things, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed.
How am I really? I'm fine. It's kind of a shit answer when you consider how privileged my life is, but, you know, I'm fine. I'm tired a lot. I don't really have an excuse to be tired a lot. You know, my friends are having babies and climbing volcanoes and doing ultra marathons and starting companies, and I'm living a pretty comfortable lifestyle, not doing any of those things, but I'm just tired all the time. There's still a lot of fun. See a lot of friends. Ski, hang out with my dog. Just a low-level fatigue behind all of it these days. Kind of a bummer.
You know, there's a passage from the book Choke by Chuck Palahniuk that goes, "We can spend our lives letting the world tell us who we are. Sane or insane, saints or sex addicts, heroes or victims, letting history tell us how good or bad we are, letting our past decide our future. Or we can decide for ourselves, and maybe it's our job to invent something better." This passage has really resonated with me for a long time. But living in a constant state of melancholy, I don't know how to invent something better. Or at least I didn't until recently. I found myself lost in my own mind. I took a wrong turn and arrived at the dark corners I've avoided most of my life. The corners where I stored past traumas like outcasts, not to be acknowledged or interacted with. Doing so, I inadvertently allowed them to become anchors that drag me down and watch me drown. But the path forward is paved through these anchors, releasing them to the seas to lay them to rest. It takes a lot of courage to face your demons, and more importantly, a lot of patience and kindness with yourself. Navigating traumas is not linear, and at times it can feel like your brain isn't on your side rooting for you. A side effect of working through trauma I've encountered is hindsight and the what could have beens. It's all too easy getting wrapped up in just remembering the good memories, the joys that provide a distraction to the sorrows, which is the stage I currently find myself in. But there is comfort and knowing this is really just a layover before reaching my final destination. So when I'm asked, how are you, really? I say, I'm fine, really. Or at least I will be.
So as I've gotten older and older, I've been thinking more and more about the people who come into our lives and we know almost immediately that they're going to be someone who plays a really significant role in the rest of our lives. And you can call it kismet, you can call it fate, they're your beshert, your soulmate, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who you're romantically involved with, but just a person who feeds your soul and offers you joy and love, and you know that they've been placed in your life for a reason. A couple of weeks ago, around Valentine's Day, a friend sent me this poem or short story reflection by a woman named Hannah Rosenberg about female friendships, and it says that my life is filled with the souls of women I love, the ones who make my belly ache from laughter, who catch my tears, who show up on my doorstep to celebrate and grieve, who defend me when I'm unkind to myself. These women love my children, dance as we age, protect my secret, share in my joy, sing even when we're sinking in sorrow. They walk close, promising their lives to me, a marriage without a wedding, a commitment without a ring. If you have these women, remember, the soulmate is a wonderful thought, but look how beautiful these love stories are. Look how they make you feel full. So this friend that sent this to me, I met her over a decade ago, before I even met my husband, while I was living in New York City during grad school. And I was attending a talk. The content was relevant to my master's thesis, so I asked the speaker a question, and at the end of the talk, this woman came up to me and said, your work sounds really interesting. I'd love to grab coffee. So we had a couple of coffee dates over the next bit of time while we were both living in the city, and talked about our overlapping interests. And then we fell out of touch for a bit. And a few years later, we both found ourselves in North Carolina, funny enough, in the same school, in the same department, doing the exact same PhD program. And since then, in the years since then, she has become truly family to me. She is an aunt to my children. We have weekly family dinners with my parents. She lived with my family for a period of time while she was navigating a divorce. She's one of the very first phone calls I make when I'm in my darkest moments, and she's one of the very first texts that I send when I have something to celebrate or something exciting that's happened. And she isn't someone that I've known since childhood, and we aren't friends because our kids go to the same preschool, but I truly, I get so choked up. I truly believe that fate put her in my life for a reason, because someone somewhere knew that I was going to need her for the years ahead. And so as I've gotten older, I've really started to recognize and appreciate this beauty and this magic that is female friendships in the women who have become my chosen family over time. Right? It's the college friend who has traveled across the country from California every single year to celebrate my oldest birthday since he turned 1. Or it's my neighbor who truly carried me through my most recent pregnancy and postpartum, fed me, shopped for me, really lifted me up when I needed her to. And I just think that these are the women that have absolutely fed my soul and offered so much fulfillment as I navigate this trip that is life. And I just think there's something so magical about women and female friendships. Hi.
Hi.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Yes.
Okay. When did you know that you were in love with me?
When? I don't know if I remember the date, but I
That's
remember around the time. It was Thanksgiving time, I think, of 2015? 14? Maybe 2014? Anyway, you had friends who didn't live in New York visiting from out of town,
Mm-hmm.
doing something. And they had this idea in their head to go to some bar from some movie that happened to be like right in the middle of Times Square. And so we hauled ourselves from your apartment on the Upper West Side all the way down to Times Square. Got to this bar, spent all of 6 minutes there, and they finally decided we're gonna go somewhere else.
A good bar.
I don't think they knew where they wanted to go next.
A better bar.
And so we plowed ourselves through the mass hordes and crowds in Times Square all the way across town to the east side to go to another bar that they decided wasn't for them either. And I think at that point you and I tapped out and went back to your apartment. But I knew that if I'm willing to go drag myself through Times Square there and back for this girl, that I must love her.
Spoken like a true New Yorker.
That's true to form.
So what's different about our relationship, or when we fell in love, or our love, that made you say, maybe you want to marry this person?
Different in the relationship is an easy one to answer, because I think in the other relationships I was in, it was very much about what could I do for that person? How can I help that person? How can I make that person feel safe? And that wasn't always reciprocated. And we shared that, and we did that for each other. And it was the first time in a relationship where I felt like I had somebody in my corner to be a champion for me and push me to make me better. And I fully believe like I'm way better today, and I have been on that trajectory like since we started our relationship together. Like I've achieved things that I never would have thought for myself possible. Love develops out of that. Like that's the foundation for it. And then this deep mutual respect and adoration and passion and caring all like formulates and creates a force field around that foundation.
It's been a decade, just about.
Shit.
Married for half of it. What's changed, or what's different now?
What isn't different now?
Fair.
Like everything's different now. We don't live in a city. We own a house. We have kids. Like everything's different now.
How has like love changed for you though? Like for me, it's one thing to fall in love with a person, an individual, right? It's another to build a life together. And then it's a whole separate, I don't even have the words to explain, to watch these little humans that we've created fall in love with the person that I've fallen in love with. Like the way the baby's face lights up when you walk in the room, or the way that, you know, the big kid is just like could not be more excited, or like goes to you when he's sad or hurt or mad, right? Like I go to you when I'm sad or hurt or mad. And so it's like seeing them love you makes me love you in a whole different way.
I truly have never loved anything the way I love our kids. And it doesn't mean I love them more than you or anything like that, but I didn't even know I was like capable of loving in that kind of a way. But I don't think I don't think I necessarily like I'm tracking our love over time and comparing what it is today to what it was back then. Like, what I track is our partnership and how that grows and how that develops, or in our case, like remains really consistent, I think. And then watching our love continuously evolve across that timeline, I think, is the interesting thing. Like, I don't think you can ever feel love for someone when you've been married for so long and have kids the same way that when you start dating. Like, that's just not reality, I don't think.
For sure.
But like the amount of love and the type of love doesn't go away, right? It just evolves around you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think we've talked about this before, but like, I'm constantly falling in love with you again in different ways, right? It's never going to be the same as it was when we were in our 20s.
No.
Bumping into each other in New York,
running
you know?
around the city.
Right. But every life change brings a new opportunity to fall in love all over again.
I agree. Thank you. I love you.
I love you.
I think about life a lot, and I think about how every single person and animal and creature on the planet has a different life experience and thinks differently and sees the world around them differently, and how they're all connected, and how even two people who live in the same home are experiencing life differently. But to me, what makes life so interesting is not just that everyone is so different and has a different life, but the connections between people and the relationships between us and the connection we have. So I enjoy connecting with different types of people. I feel like the value in my life is really the relationships that I have with my friends and my family. And I feel like I feel most alive when I connect with people, and there's that excitement and there's a spark, and we're enjoying our conversation. We're talking about life and love and loss and everything in between, and we're just really feeling alive and connected. And to me, that's what life is about. So those connections. And I feel like I've always prioritized friendships and love and connection in my family. But I think as I get older, I do realize that a really, really intense connections, really deep connections are not as common as you get older. Like I'm fortunate enough to have friends from childhood and friends from high school and college and after college. So I feel very fortunate that I have maintained my friendships throughout my life, but I don't feel like it's as easy to connect with new people as you get older. Everybody's got their own lives and they're busy, and not everybody takes the moment to connect with a new person. So I value my long-term friendships, and I get excited about new friendships when they happen. But I realize that to me is what life is all about. And when it happens, it's rare and it's amazing, and it's just something to really cherish. So anyway, those are my thoughts about life and what makes it so exciting. Thanks for letting me share.
Hi, I'm Oliver, and I'm going to talk about life. Life is a form of living. My favorite part of it is art. Art is a way you can express your emotions with a pen. My favorite things to draw is dragons and humans. My art style is realistic. I like to draw realistic stuff. I also like soccer. Soccer is a good way for you to communicate with your teammates and help work together. Your skill of working together is very important. You can also do a lot of fun stuff, including Pokemon cards and video games. Video games are really fun. I like life because it's cool.
In the summer of 2014, my friend George and I road tripped from Maine out to Colorado. We were both only a year or two out of college, and we had just finished working at this summer camp, and neither of us really knew what we wanted to do afterwards. So we bought this piece of junk car for $1,500 cash. The whole underbody was rusted through, and there were about 1,000 cigarette butts inside from the previous owner that we had to clean out. But we didn't care. Honestly, it was perfect. We named her Lola, and we loved her. We drove from Maine down through the Midwest, through Memphis, and then on down to New Orleans, stopping whenever we felt like it. Every day was a blank canvas, and there was nothing but the open road ahead. And I just remember feeling so free and so alive. This one night we camped out somewhere in the middle of West Texas. It was a full moon and there was nobody else around for miles. Under the moon and the stars, I remember thinking that life and the world had so much possibility. I believed that I could do anything. I could be anything. And back then it was kind of true. A week or two later, we landed in Denver and we eventually got jobs. And all of a sudden, it felt like I got swooped up by some great force that hooked onto me and started zooming forward into the future faster than I could comprehend what was happening. And slowly but surely, I started getting this sense that doors were starting to close more than they were opening. And all of these potential futures that once felt so close at hand started to drift further and further away in the rearview mirror of my mind. And before I knew it, 10 years have passed. And sitting here now, I ask myself, how am I really? I'm not the same happy-go-lucky boy that I was back then. I don't really feel young at all anymore. I feel old. I'm finding more gray hairs. I feel tired all the time. And I often find myself struggling to reconcile the reality of my present with the lofty idealism and expectations of my youth. I find myself grieving certain parts of me that I've lost and I'm not sure I can get back. Some days I'm jaded, cold, distrusting of strangers, cynical about the future, resentful of the society we've inherited, and more scared than excited for what the next 10 years will bring. But every now and then, I remember that this is the game we must play, trying to hold on to our hope and our humanity in a world that seems to be constantly trying to take them away. I'm reminded that grief, suffering, and disappointment are inevitabilities in life, and that as the years go on, we have to work harder to find the beauty, to create love, and to cultivate that community that we want for ourselves. Because if I've learned anything, it's that this world is not going to just give it to you. And yeah, some days, some months, some years, we're going to lose that game. And maybe we're not going to fix everything in the world like I thought we would when I was 16. But every single day, we can love those around us. We can choose to spread joy and laughter instead of hate and distrust. We can still create those moments of perfection, even if we know they're ephemeral. Maybe it's not what we all hoped and dreamed it would be. But then again, our stories are still constantly being written. And as long as I've still got ink in the pot, I'm going to try my goddamn best to write a story of love and joy and beauty.